The moment I stepped into Michael's spacious suburban home in Seattle, Washington, knowing his wife had left for a 2-week family visit, I felt a strange tension in the air that I couldn't explain. Little did I know that this ordinary act of helping my 58-year-old boss with some household repairs would lead to a revelation that would forever change how I saw him and myself. Michael greeted me at the door with that familiar firm handshake, his silver-streaked hair catching the afternoon light, his kind blue eyes crinkling at the corners the way they always did during board meetings. "Matthew, I really appreciate you coming over on such short notice," he said, his voice steady but carrying an undertone I hadn't noticed before. "The roof leak won't fix itself, and with Laura gone, I'm hopeless with tools." I smiled, setting down my toolbox, trying to ignore the way my pulse quickened. At 28, I had spent 3 years as his executive assistant, keeping my personal life strictly separate from the office. No one at the firm knew I was gay, and I intended to keep it that way. Michael had always been the picture of traditional success. Married for 30 years, 2 grown kids, a corner office overlooking Puget Sound. Helping him now felt like stepping into a world I had no business entering. We started in the attic, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of old cedar. He handed me a flashlight while he held the ladder, our arms brushing once, twice. Conversation flowed easily at first, work deadlines, the latest merger, his daughter's upcoming wedding. But as the sun dipped lower, painting the room in golden hues, something shifted. "You know, Matthew," he said quietly, wiping sweat from his brow, "sometimes I wonder what life would look like if I hadn't followed the path everyone expected." I paused, hammer in hand, sensing the weight behind his words. He wasn't just talking about career choices. We worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of wood and our breathing. When we finally climbed down for water, Michael lingered in the kitchen, staring out the window at the manicured lawn. "Laura's been gone 3 days and the house already feels too big," he admitted. I nodded, not sure how to respond. That night, after we patched the worst of the leak, he insisted on ordering pizza. We sat at the granite island, beers in hand, and the conversation turned personal. He asked about my life outside the office, hobbies, friends, relationships. I kept my answers vague, but he pressed gently. "You're a good man, Matthew. Anyone would be lucky to have you." His eyes held mine a second too long. I felt heat rise in my cheeks and changed the subject quickly. By the time I left that first evening, the distance between boss and assistant had already begun to blur. The next morning I returned early, coffee in hand. Michael looked tired, as if he hadn't slept. We moved to the backyard deck, replacing rotted boards under the morning sun. He opened up more, talking about how his marriage had grown comfortable but empty, how he had sacrificed dreams for stability. "I love Laura," he said, "but sometimes I feel like I've been living someone else's story." I listened, heart pounding, wondering if he was hinting at what I thought. By afternoon we were laughing over old college stories he shared, his guard lowering with every hour. That evening, as rain began to fall, we moved inside. He poured whiskey and we sat by the fireplace. "Matthew, can I ask you something personal?" he said. I nodded. "Have you ever wanted something so badly that admitting it might destroy everything you built?" His question hung in the air like smoke. I swallowed hard, realizing this conversation was no longer about home repairs. The rain intensified outside, mirroring the storm building between us. We talked late into the night, words flowing like they had been waiting years to escape. When I finally drove home, the city lights blurred through my windshield. My mind raced with possibilities I had never dared consider. The following days blurred together in a rhythm of work and revelation. We fixed the fence, painted the guest room, and with every task Michael shared fragments of his past. Youthful friendships that felt deeper than they should have. Nights of quiet confusion he buried under ambition and family duty. I shared pieces of my own story too, carefully at first, then more openly. He never flinched. Instead, he listened with an intensity that made my chest tighten. One afternoon, while sanding the deck railing, our hands touched accidentally and neither of us pulled away immediately. The contact sent electricity through me. "You're easy to talk to," he said softly. I haven't felt this scene in decades. I smiled, but inside I was terrified. What if this was just loneliness talking? What if I was reading everything wrong? By the end of the first week, the house repairs were nearly done, but the emotional walls between us had crumbled. Michael began texting me after I left each day. Simple messages about the project, then longer ones about his thoughts. I replied carefully yet eagerly. The distance that once defined our relationship was shrinking with every conversation, every shared silence. I lay awake at night replaying his words, wondering if the man I had admired from afar for years was struggling with the same feelings I had hidden for so long. The weekend arrived with clear skies. We planned to finish the patio furniture. Michael greeted me in casual clothes, looking younger than his years, his smile genuine. "Ready for round 2?" he joked. We worked side by side, the sun warming our backs, conversation turning to dreams we had abandoned. He spoke of traveling Europe alone, of writing the novel he started in his 20s. I confessed my own quiet longing for a life where I didn't have to hide who I loved. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "Matthew," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "What if the life we're supposed to live is the one we're afraid to claim?" The question lingered as we packed up tools that evening. When I turned to leave, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "Stay for dinner, please." I stayed. Over grilled salmon and chilled wine on the deck, the conversation deepened further. He told me about a college roommate he had cared for more than a friend, how fear had kept him silent. I shared my first heartbreak, the years of pretending. Tears welled in his eyes, not from sadness but from relief. "I never thought I'd say this out loud," he admitted. The night air grew cool, but the warmth between us grew. As I drove away later, the city lights seemed brighter, the future suddenly filled with terrifying possibility. The second week began with a sense of inevitability. Repairs complete, we shifted to smaller tasks, organizing the garage, sorting old photos. Michael pulled out albums from his youth, pointing to pictures of himself at 20, carefree and smiling beside a friend whose arm rested casually around his shoulders. "That was the last time I felt truly free," he said quietly. I didn't press. Instead, I listened as he unpacked decades of quiet longing. Our talks stretched into evenings, boundaries dissolving. One night, after a particularly honest exchange, he walked me to my car. "Thank you for helping me see clearly," he said. His hand brushed mine as he handed me my jacket. Neither of us spoke of the spark, but it was there, undeniable. The next day brought rain again, keeping us indoors. We cooked together in the kitchen, laughing over burnt toast and spilled coffee. Michael opened a bottle of his best Cabernet and we toasted to new beginnings. "To honesty," he said, clinking glasses. Our eyes met and held. In that moment, the last of my hesitation melted. I realized I wasn't just helping my boss anymore. I was falling for the man behind the title. Yet fear lingered. What would his family think? What would the firm say? The conversation that followed changed everything. "Matthew?" Michael began, voice trembling slightly. "I think I've been in love with you for longer than I realized." The words hung between us, raw and real. My heart slammed against my ribs. This was the confession that would rewrite our lives, the turning point neither of us could undo. I stared at Michael across the kitchen island, the weight of his words settling over me like a warm blanket and a storm cloud at once. "Michael, I don't know what to say," I managed, my voice barely steady. He didn't look away. "You don't have to say anything yet. Just know that admitting this to you, to myself, has lifted something I've carried for 30 years. The rain drummed steadily against the windows, mirroring the chaos inside my chest. I had come here to fix a roof, not to rewrite two lives. Yet here we stood, the air thick with possibility and terror. We moved to the living room, sinking into the leather couch where family photos smiled down from the mantel. Michael poured more wine, his hands trembling slightly. He spoke of nights lying awake beside Laura, feeling like an actor in his own marriage. "She deserves better than half a husband," he said softly. But I was too scared to face what I wanted. I listened, sharing my own guarded history. College crushes I buried, relationships that never felt safe enough to last. He nodded with understanding that went beyond words. The hours slipped away. By midnight we had moved closer on the couch, shoulders touching, the space between us charged. He reached out, hesitating, then rested his hand over mine. The touch was gentle, questioning. I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned my palm up, lacing our fingers. Neither of us spoke of labels or futures. We simply sat, breathing the same air, letting truth settle. The next morning brought sunlight and awkward silence. Michael made breakfast, eggs and toast, while I stood at the window processing. "Last night wasn't a dream, was it?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "No. But Michael, your wife, your kids. The company, this could destroy everything." He set the plate down. "I know. And I'm terrified. But pretending anymore feels like dying slowly." We spent the day in the garden, trimming roses Laura loved, the physical work grounding us. Conversation flowed easier now, laced with tentative hope. He asked about my dreams, my fears of coming out at work. I confessed the isolation of hiding. "You're the first person who makes me feel seen without judgment," I told him. His smile was soft, grateful. That afternoon a neighbor stopped by unexpectedly. We stepped apart quickly, the moment a stark reminder of the world outside. After the neighbor left, Michael sighed. "This is going to be complicated." I nodded, but the pull between us only strengthened. Evening brought another deep talk. He showed me old journals from college, pages filled with confused longing he had hidden even from himself. Reading them felt intimate, like stepping into his soul. "I thought if I married well and succeeded professionally, the feelings would fade," he admitted. "They never did. They just waited for you." His honesty cracked something open in me. I told him about the night I realized I was gay, alone in my apartment, crying for hours. He listened without interruption, then pulled me into a hug. It lasted longer than friendship allowed, but felt exactly right. The following days blurred in a mix of normalcy and revolution. We finished small projects, cooked meals, watched old movies on the couch. Each night the conversations grew deeper, mapping out fears and hopes. He worried about hurting Laura, about disappointing his children. I worried about losing my job, about the whispers that would follow. Yet every shared vulnerability drew us closer. One evening, as we sat on the deck under string lights, Michael turned to me. "Matthew, whatever happens next, I need you to know this isn't just loneliness. It's real." I believed him. The next morning brought the first real test. Laura called from Chicago, her voice bright on speakerphone. Michael's face tightened as he answered, keeping his tone light. I slipped into the next room, heart racing. When he hung up, he looked drained. "She's coming home early, next week instead of the week after." Panic flickered in his eyes. "We have to decide what this means before then." The news hit like cold water. We spent the day processing, walking the neighborhood trails, hands brushing but never holding in public. Back home, the conversation turned to practicalities. "I can't ask you to wait forever," he said. "But I also can't pretend this didn't happen." I suggested space, time to think. He agreed, yet neither of us wanted it. That night we sat in silence for hours, the weight of impending reality pressing down. The following morning I arrived to find Michael pacing. "I had a dream last night," he said. "We were walking together in Paris, no hiding, no fear. It felt possible. His vulnerability melted my hesitation. I stepped forward and, for the first time, initiated the hug. We held each other in the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. When we pulled apart, his eyes shone with unshed tears. "Thank you for not running," he whispered. The days accelerated. We talked about telling his family, about my own parents who still believed I was too busy for dating. Misunderstandings crept in. A text from my roommate joking about my hot boss that Michael saw and misinterpreted as doubt. We talked through it, learning to trust the honesty we had built. One afternoon, while sorting old letters in his study, Michael found one from his college roommate. Reading it aloud, his voice broke. The letter spoke of love and regret. "I never answered him," Michael said. "I chose the safe path instead." The revelation deepened our bond. We spent the evening discussing sacrifice, what we were willing to lose for truth. I realized I was ready to stand beside him, whatever the cost. Yet fear remained. The weekend arrived with a surprise visit from Michael's son, home from college unexpectedly. We maintained professional distance, but the tension was palpable. After the son left, Michael collapsed onto the couch. That was too close. We talked late, mapping possible futures, coming out slowly, therapy together, perhaps even leaving the firm if needed. The conversation solidified something important. We were no longer just two men helping with repairs. We were partners in courage. As the week drew to a close, the house felt transformed. Not just repaired, but alive with possibility. Laura's return loomed, but so did our resolve. Michael looked at me across the dinner table one night. "No matter what happens when she comes home, I'm done living half a life." His words carried the weight of decades. I reached for his hand. "Then we face it together." The rain had stopped days ago, but inside us a new storm brewed. One of hope, fear, and the beautiful unknown. The final days before Laura's return passed in a haze of urgency and tenderness. Michael and I spent every available hour together, not as boss and assistant anymore, but as two men discovering what it meant to be truly seen. We drove to the coast one afternoon, parking at a quiet overlook where the Puget Sound stretched endlessly. The wind whipped around us as we walked the rocky shore, hands finally clasped without fear of witnesses. "I never imagined feeling this free at 58, Michael said, voice carried away by the breeze. I squeezed his hand. "And I never imagined finding it with someone like you." We sat on a driftwood log, sharing stories of childhood dreams and adult compromises. He spoke of the pressure from his conservative family to marry young, to build the perfect life. I shared the loneliness of moving to Seattle after college, building walls to protect my truth. The conversation healed old wounds neither of us had acknowledged. Back at the house that evening, we cooked pasta together, laughing when sauce splattered across the counter. The domesticity felt natural, right? Later, on the couch, Michael rested his head on my shoulder. "Whatever comes next, I want you to know I'm choosing this, choosing us." His words wrapped around me like a promise. Yet reality intruded the next morning with a call from the office. A major client meeting had been moved up, requiring Michael's presence. I returned to my role as assistant, fielding emails and scheduling, but every glance across the conference table carried new meaning. Colleagues noticed nothing, but the secret hummed between us. After work, we met at the house again. The conversation turned serious. "I need to tell Laura first," Michael said. "She deserves the truth from me, not rumors." I agreed, though dread coiled in my stomach. We rehearsed the words, practiced responses to possible reactions. The emotional labor exhausted us both, but it strengthened our bond. That night we watched an old black and white film, hands intertwined, finding comfort in silence. The misunderstanding came 2 days later. Michael's daughter called, sensing something off in her father's voice during their weekly chat. She pressed him, and in a moment of panic he said I was simply helping with repairs. She laughed it off, but the lie sat heavy. Later, Michael confessed the slip. "I hated hiding you," he said. We talked through the guilt, emerging closer, committed to honesty moving forward. The big turning point arrived on the eve of Laura's return. We sat in the backyard under stars, the house quiet around us. Michael turned to me, eyes serious. "Matthew, I'm going to tell her everything tomorrow. I can't start our future on a lie." My heart raced. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "For the first time in my life, yes." We stayed up talking strategy, fears, and the life we might build. Perhaps traveling, perhaps starting over in a new city. The conversation stretched until dawn, leaving us exhausted but united. Laura's plane landed the next morning. I stayed away, giving them space, but Michael texted updates. The initial reunion was warm, then tense as he steered the talk toward deeper waters. By evening, my phone rang. Michael's voice was raw. "She's hurt, angry, but listening. She wants to meet you." The invitation terrified and relieved me. I drove over, heart hammering. Laura greeted me at the door, her eyes red but steady. We sat in the living room, the same space where Michael and I had first connected. The conversation was painful, honest. She asked questions, voiced betrayal, but also acknowledged the emptiness she had felt too. Michael held her hand while speaking to me, a gesture of respect that broke my heart and mended it. Hours passed in raw dialogue. Laura finally stood. "I need time, but I see how you look at each other. I won't stand in the way of truth." Her grace stunned us. After she went upstairs, Michael and I stepped outside. He pulled me into an embrace. We survived the first storm. The days that followed tested us all. Laura moved temporarily to their daughter's place, giving Michael space. The office buzzed with rumors when word leaked that the boss was separating. I faced awkward questions, deflecting with professionalism. Michael and I stole moments together. Coffee runs, late-night calls, nourishing the fragile new relationship. A betrayal came from an unexpected source. Michael's longtime golf buddy, who overheard a conversation and confronted him, accusing him of destroying a perfect family. The confrontation left Michael shaken, questioning everything. We talked for hours that night. "Is this worth the pain I'm causing?" he asked. I reminded him of the freedom he described on the beach, the man he wanted to become. His resolve returned. The psychological toll showed in small ways: sleepless nights, weight loss, but also in growth. Michael began therapy, inviting me to join sessions. We learned to communicate through fear, to choose each other daily. My own family reacted with shock when I finally came out to them over video call. My mother cried, my father grew quiet, but eventually they asked to meet Michael. The meeting was tense at first, then warm as stories were shared. Acceptance came slowly, but it came. Meanwhile, at the firm, whispers grew louder. Michael called a meeting with HR and key partners, coming out publicly. The reaction was mixed. Some supportive, others distant. But the relief on his face was profound. "I'm finally living my story," he told me afterward. The climax built as Laura returned for a final conversation. We met at a neutral cafe, the three of us navigating pain, forgiveness, and new boundaries. She admitted her own loneliness, wished us well, and asked for time to heal. Watching Michael release the guilt he carried was the most beautiful thing I had witnessed. That evening, back at the now half-empty house, Michael turned to me. "I thought losing everything would break me. Instead, it set me free." We stood on the deck where it all began, hands linked, the city lights twinkling below. The journey had been messy, painful, beautiful. We had faced misunderstanding, betrayal, sacrifice, and emerged stronger. Michael's growth inspired me to embrace my own identity fully. No more hiding at work, no more half-lived dreams. Together we planned small steps. Weekends away, therapy, building a life on truth. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time, it felt ours. Months passed in a rhythm of healing and discovery. Michael sold the big suburban house, moving into a smaller condo downtown with views of the water. I helped pack boxes, each one carrying memories we discussed openly, laughing over old vacation photos, crying over letters from his past. The process strengthened us. At the firm, my role evolved. Michael stepped back from daily operations, mentoring from afar, giving me space to grow into a senior position. Colleagues who once whispered now offered quiet support. One afternoon, a younger employee pulled me aside. "Seeing you both live authentically gave me courage," she said. The words meant everything. Our relationship deepened through small, meaningful acts. We cooked Sunday brunches, explored hiking trails outside the city, attended local LGBTQ events hand in hand. Michael's laughter returned, lighter than I had ever heard. One evening at a gallery opening, he introduced me as his partner without hesitation. The pride in his voice erased every doubt. Yet challenges persisted. His son struggled with the changes, skipping family dinners, sending angry texts. Michael faced each conversation with patience, sharing his journey without demanding instant forgiveness. "Growth takes time," he reminded me after a particularly hard call. I supported him through it, learning that love sometimes meant sitting in discomfort together. My own parents visited Seattle, meeting Michael over dinner. The evening started formal but ended with my father clapping Michael on the back, saying, "You make our son happy. That's enough for us." Tears stung my eyes as we hugged goodbye at the airport. The acceptance I had craved for years finally arrived. Laura and Michael finalized their divorce amicably. She found new purpose in volunteering, occasionally texting us updates with genuine warmth. The grace she showed modeled the humanity we all aspired to. One weekend we drove to the coast again, this time staying in a small inn. Walking the beach at sunset, Michael stopped and turned to me. "Remember the first time we talked about dreams?" I nodded. "I'm living mine now with you." We kissed then, soft and unhurried, the waves crashing as witness. The moment felt cinematic, real. Back in the city, life settled into joyful routine. We hosted friends, old and new, for game nights, conversations flowing freely about identity, love, and acceptance. Michael began writing again, short essays about late-blooming courage. I read every draft, offering feedback and pride. The psychological growth in both of us was profound. I no longer second-guessed my worth. Michael no longer carried the weight of pretense. One crisp autumn evening, Michael surprised me with tickets to Paris, the city from his dream. "Let's start the next chapter there," he said. We spent 2 weeks wandering cobblestone streets, holding hands openly, planning a future unbound by past expectations. On our last night, overlooking the Eiffel Tower, he whispered, "Thank you for helping me find myself." I replied simply, "We found each other." Returning home, we faced one final hurdle. Michael's ex-golf buddy reached out, apologizing for his earlier reaction. They met for coffee, emerging with cautious friendship restored. The reconciliation reminded us that bridges could be rebuilt. At the firm's holiday party, Michael and I attended together. Colleagues raised glasses, toasts mixing respect and warmth. Standing beside him, watching the room celebrate authenticity, I felt the full circle of our journey. From roof repairs to public pride, every step had mattered. The year ended with quiet reflection. We sat by the condo fireplace, sharing memories. If someone told me a year ago that helping my boss would lead here, I said, I would have laughed. Michael smiled. And I would have run. But look at us now. The conversation turned to the future, perhaps adopting a dog, traveling more, supporting LGBTQ youth through mentorship. The possibilities felt endless. Challenges would come, family holidays, societal stares, but we faced them as a team. Michael's transformation from a man trapped by expectations to one embracing truth inspired everyone around us. My own growth, from closeted assistant to confident partner, completed the picture. Together we proved that love, when built on honesty, could rewrite even the most rigid scripts. As winter rains returned to Seattle, we curled up on the couch, planning the next adventure. The house repairs had long been forgotten, replaced by a life under construction. One of courage, acceptance, and unbreakable connection. Spring brought renewal in more ways than one. Michael and I planted a small garden on the condo balcony, tomatoes and herbs symbolizing fresh starts. Each morning we watered them together, talking about the week ahead. The simple ritual grounded us amid busy schedules. At work, I led my first major project, Michael cheering from the sidelines as advisor. His pride was palpable, free of the old power dynamic. Colleagues respected the shift, some even seeking advice on their own personal journeys. One young intern confided in me about questioning his sexuality. I shared our story gently, emphasizing courage over perfection. The conversation reminded me why honesty mattered. Michael's writing gained traction online, essays about late-life authenticity resonating with readers worldwide. He read comments aloud at dinner, eyes shining. "People are finding hope in our truth," he said. We celebrated each milestone with quiet dinners, toasts to the unexpected path that brought us here. Family dynamics continued evolving. Michael's daughter visited with her fiancé, the evening filled with laughter and honest questions. She hugged me goodbye, whispering, "Dad's happier than I've ever seen him." "Thank you." The words healed old wounds. My parents sent care packages, including a framed photo of us all together, proof of growing acceptance. Laura remarried quietly, sending a kind note wishing us well. The circle of forgiveness widened. One weekend we attended a pride festival, marching hand in hand for the first time. The energy was electric, rainbows everywhere. Michael, once terrified of visibility, waved a flag high. "This is freedom," he said above the music. I kissed him right there, surrounded by cheers. The moment crystallized our journey. Summer arrived with travel plans. We flew to New York, exploring museums and Broadway shows. In Central Park, Michael stopped under an old oak. "Remember when I asked if you'd ever wanted something worth risking everything?" I nodded. "Today, I'd risk it all again for this life." We picnicked on the grass, planning the next decade, perhaps buying a small cabin, writing a book together, mentoring others. The conversation flowed effortlessly, built on years of trust. Back in Seattle, a minor crisis tested us. Michael received a medical scare, routine tests requiring follow-up. The days of waiting were anxious, but we faced them together. Holding his hand in the doctor's office, I realized how deeply we had woven our lives. The results came back clear, but the experience deepened our appreciation for every moment. We celebrated with a weekend getaway to the San Juan Islands, kayaking and watching sunsets. On the ferry ride home, Michael turned to me. "I used to fear endings. Now I only fear not living fully." His words echoed our growth. Autumn brought reflection. We hosted a small gathering for friends and chosen family, sharing stories around the table. Michael raised a glass. "To the repairman who fixed more than my roof." Laughter filled the room. I looked around, grateful for the community we had built. The year closed with a quiet proposal. Not marriage yet, but a promise. Michael handed me a key to a small lakeside cabin. "Our next chapter starts here, whenever we're ready." I accepted, tears in my eyes. The symbolic gesture represented everything: commitment, adventure, home. Winter returned, but warmth filled our condo. We decorated simply, focusing on meaningful ornaments from our travels. One evening, curled by the fire, we revisited the beginning. "That first conversation changed everything," Michael said. "No more distance." I smiled. "Just us." The journey had included misunderstandings that tested trust, secrets that once burdened, betrayals from outsiders, sacrifices of old lives, and truths that set us free. Through it all, we chose growth. Michael became an advocate, speaking at local events about late-blooming authenticity. I supported LGBTQ workplace initiatives at the firm. Our actions rippled outward, helping others find courage. As another year dawned, we stood on the balcony, looking at the garden we had planted. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Michael asked. I took his hand. "With you? Always." The story of two men who found love while fixing a roof had become a testament to resilience, acceptance, and the power of honest conversation. The years that followed unfolded like chapters in a book we were writing together. Michael and I bought the lakeside cabin, spending weekends there restoring it much like we had restored his old house, only this time with laughter and no secrets. Neighbors became friends, none judging the life we shared openly. Michael published his first book, a memoir blending humor and honesty about his journey. The launch party in Seattle drew a diverse crowd, including Laura and both our families. Standing on stage, he thanked me publicly as his partner and muse. The applause washed over us like validation of every hard choice. I continued rising at the firm, eventually becoming partner, using my position to champion inclusive policies. Young employees sought me out, inspired by our visible partnership. One particularly moving conversation came from a closeted executive who, after months of talks, decided to come out to his wife. "You two showed me it's possible," he said. The ripple effect humbled us daily. Family holidays evolved into joyful, blended gatherings. Michael's grandchildren called us both Grandpa, the title earned through consistent love and presence. My parents visited often, bringing recipes and stories, fully embracing Michael as family. The acceptance we once fought for now surrounded us naturally. Challenges still appeared, health scares, professional setbacks, societal pushback, but we faced them as a united front. During one difficult period when Michael's health required surgery, I stayed by his bedside, reading his favorite books aloud. His recovery strengthened our bond further, reminding us of life's fragility. We traveled more, visiting places from his old journals, Paris, Rome, Tokyo, each trip deepening our appreciation for the time we had reclaimed. On a balcony in Santorini, overlooking whitewashed buildings and blue sea, Michael renewed his promise. "Every day I choose you again." I answered the same. Back home, we mentored at a local LGBTQ center, sharing our story with youth struggling with identity. Watching young faces light up with hope was the greatest reward. One evening, after a particularly impactful session, Michael turned to me in the car. "Remember when you helped an old married man fix his roof?" I laughed. Best decision I ever made. The conversation that started everything had indeed changed every distance, between us, within ourselves, and with the world. We had grown from hesitant strangers to partners building a legacy of authenticity. As we entered our later years together, the cabin became our full-time home. We sat on the porch most evenings, watching the lake reflect the sky, hands linked. Michael, now in his 70s, still had that same warm smile. "I never imagined this ending," he said one night. "But I'm grateful it began with you." I squeezed his hand. It was never an ending, just the start of living. Our story inspired a documentary, interviews where we spoke candidly about love, loss, and acceptance. Viewers wrote letters thanking us for showing that it's never too late. The impact extended far beyond our lives. Looking back, every misunderstanding taught communication. Every secret revealed the power of truth. Every betrayal highlighted true allies. Every sacrifice proved worth it. And every truth faced forged unbreakable strength. We had come full circle from that rainy Seattle night to a peaceful lakeside life. The journey of self-discovery, love, and acceptance had transformed two ordinary men into beacons for others. As the sun set over the water one final evening in our story, Michael turned to me with the same question from years ago, now answered completely. Was the risk of true love worth every consequence? True or false?